Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm Kristen. I'm joined by John and Dan. And so today we're going to talk about kind of how to navigate creators, commerce, and convenience. So the whole impetus for kind of how the three of us kind of came to be was we all partnered on a campaign for Folgers, where it was all based on the insight where while Folgers may be a household name, and we can all probably recite the jingle, not everybody in the household had Folgers top of mind. Namely Gen Z. And so we came together to kind of create an influencer campaign, match influencers for Folgers to create these customized starter packs, and Gopuff was able to deliver those starter packs to people to purchase. And so based on our work together today, we'll talk about what that has evolved to and kind of how we see the future state looking like from our three perspectives, which I think is really interesting. So John, I'll start with you. We started our journey with social commerce and tapped into creators as a channel to tell an authentic and relevant story for Gen Z. So let's first start with how we approached the campaign. Can you walk us through the initial strategy discussions that led to the collaboration between Folgers, PS1, Influential, and Dolan?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it started with, innovation can happen in a lot of different ways. Sometimes you have a brand need and that drives innovation, and sometimes you have a product and you kind of figure out where does this make sense. So I think our central commerce team had been working with Gopuff on this program called Shopify that was a loose opportunity to say, hey, we're going to create shoppable bundles. We'll use TikTok as a platform to help kind of create this. And they brought it to us and we said, okay, this sounds really exciting, but we needed a brand that this is relevant for. And back to your point on Folgers, we had just relaunched a campaign to kind of reintroduce Folgers, be very unapologetic about our history, our brand, but we couldn't reintroduce a brand to Gen Z that didn't even know we existed. So we needed a unique campaign that could help address that, and we knew that it wasn't about the same brand assets we had, so we had to start from a place of how do we reach Gen Z in a meaningful way? And that's where we kind of really aligned on this creator-led social engagement. But then the power of GoPuff was to take a product that is, generally speaking, a very planned purchase and be able to create that kind of impulsivity around, we talked about from, social feeds to doorsteps in 30 minutes. And I think that was kind of a really powerful aspect to kind of collapse the funnel and bring it all together.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I noticed everyone here said that they've heard of Gopuff, so I was actually going to have Dan, can you give a little background on Gopuff, just anyway, and what is the value proposition and differentiators?
Sure. Well, one, I was very happy that no one raised their hand and didn't know what Gopuff was. And I was less happy that no one really raised their hand except for someone who works at Gopuff that can order after 1 a.m. I don't know if you guys are shameful about that or not, but we don't judge. So yeah, but just quick on Gopuff, it sounds like everyone knows, but we're an instant delivery platform. The company's a little bit over 10 years old, and when we started the business, the impetus was convenience wasn't as convenient as it should be. A lot of people were sick of going to the store and picking up the goods and going home, and sometimes they didn't want to, whatever, it was like late at night or whatever it was. And so the way that we approached the industry was very different. We kind of took a contrarian approach to what many others that you guys have been accustomed to. So while everyone was building these asset-like marketplaces that connected couriers and merchants, we decided to own inventory, build a network of micro-fulfillment centers, as we call them, which are warehouses, and control the end-to-end customer experience. Ultimately, because one, you can't really have a great customer experience if you don't own inventory and you don't really control every step of the way that they go through. And two, the worst customer experience is when you run out of money. And the third-party marketplace businesses are inherently less profitable than what everyone is accustomed to know as like traditional retail. So we took a spin, I would say, on traditional retail and built a hyperlocal logistics network across the U.S. and now the U.K. We have over 400 micro-fulfillment centers across the United States. We operate in 43 states, 32 of which we sell alcohol. And we're delivering everything from like ice cream, snacks, and alcohol to baby, pet, beauty, over-the-counter medicine, personal care items, things like that. So it's roughly 5,000 SKUs, and I'd say assortment-wise sits somewhere between like a CVS, a Kroger, and a 7-Eleven. We're not going to ever have 12 SKUs of mustard because we don't think that's necessary, and we don't think you care if you're out of mustard. But we're definitely going to have the mustard when you need it. So that's just like a little bit of a summary.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Gopuff owns the inventory, because I think that leads in nicely to my next question to you, John, which was, to achieve the right content for this campaign, what was the process for balancing the emphasis of Folgers products and incorporating other available items on Gopuff so it was a more natural experience for the consumer?
Yeah, that's a great point or question. We started off first. We knew we needed the right content approach. I think we talk a lot about Gen Z as having a high bullshit detector and not wanting to have brands jamming messages down their throats. So, we partnered very closely with TikTok to actually do an onboarding session where we looked at what are platform trends, how are Gen Z engaging with not just coffee content, but just in general within the platform in a meaningful way brands. So we landed on this starter pack as a trend that was happening, very organically within social. And then, so, okay, great. Well, what is Folgers' role within this? And that was a tough conversation with the brand. There was like, this is not a Folgers ad. Folgers will be front and center, but it's not the only thing that we're going to be asking our creators. And we're going to give them the license and creative freedom to be authentic to themselves. So we had 5 different college-age creators creating starter packs from a morning self-care routine, so that was important to this creator and their voice, to a college athlete that had his back-to-school training starter pack. So we gave them the freedom and said, great. I think the only restrictions were, don't have a competitive coffee. Make sure you say Folgers. I think that was another interesting the pronunciation. You're like, yeah, we have a problem with Gen Z. They don't know us, and a lot of our creators in the first take it was Folgers, and we're like, I'm gonna need you to reshoot that one. And so we just basically said pick non-competitive products. Don't pick an energy drink, and then after that, here's the Gopuff library. Pick what is authentic and unique to you. And so, I think it was not a tough sell to JMS and Smuckers and Folgers brand team, but it was, we're gonna create content that is relevant. And so that might not be that you have 100% share of voice of this conversation, but we will make sure that you are the reason. And the other thing too is that you need to create some urgency around it, and that you wanted someone to create this bundle. I want this bundle of products, not just, I guess I'll get Folgers.
Yeah, thinking about it from the consumer lens first and how it makes sense. Yeah, we hosted a creator panel last night, and in the Q&A section, almost all the times we do creator panels, often as you can imagine in our line of work, they're always asked, what can brands do for 3 things to make the campaign go easier. And 100% of the time, the answer is always saying, give us the creative liberty. We grew our audience, we know how to talk to them. Let us come to the table with ideas and participate and contribute, and not necessarily follow word for word from the script.
Yeah, it's that, and we did give them a script. It was, here are some relevant talking points about the brand, and then we gave them the freedom, and that meant that we weren't doing a ton of revisions. So when we got ideas back, it's here's your It
goes so much easier. So, to that end, what were some of the key learnings from the Folgers campaign, and what can other brands take away from that collaboration?
I think there are so many. I think one that jumps out to me is we were very careful when we set this campaign up with the brand teams about what does success look like. And to us, this was about, reintroducing our brand, or introducing our brand in many cases, to Gen Z. And so there was very much, we knew brand perception was going to be a big part of that. And then we were very careful, knowing this is the Gopuff and shoppability angle, that there's this tendency, when you add a shoppable layer, all of a sudden everyone switches their mindset to in KPIs to say, well, because it's shoppable, now ROAS is the only thing that matters. And so we were very intentional about, thinking through this and saying, we have the opportunity to collapse the path to purchase. Not everybody is going to buy, and that's okay, but we are giving the option to those to be able to seamlessly do this for those that choose to, that want to. And so I think that was a really important part, because we needed to make sure that the overall program had the right metrics to measure its success. So I think that was a really big learning. And I think just back to the idea of, you think about creator-led commerce, you have to be okay with trusting the creators to do what they do best and not try to control the conversation.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I want to move into kind of what this has evolved into from this campaign. So Dan, how is Gopuff enabling commerce today, and how has that evolved over time? Second part to the question, what role does convenience play for today's shoppers?
I forget the second one.
John, I'll repeat that.
No, I think it's a good question. It's actually something for us that's really important. We've spent the last 10 years becoming the face of instant commerce. We created this category a decade ago when everyone thought it was crazy that you would need to get a pint of Ben & Jerry's in 30 minutes. And now if you guys look around the retail industry, every retailer is trying to figure out how to solve delivery, and they're struggling. I mean, we get a lot of calls from other retailers trying to understand how we've done it and opportunities to partner with them. And we really designed our model for instant commerce. Micro-fulfillment centers, network of buildings in cities that focus on high-density areas, proximity to the right type of demographic. And we talk about like the Gen Z millennial demo, that we own the 18 to 35-year-old. I say all that to say we built the rails for instant commerce, and we've done that by really focusing on the delivery app, which is Gopuff. A lot of people don't know this, but we've also acquired a number of retail businesses. So we own Bevmo out on the West Coast, which is a 161-store liquor chain. We own Liquor Barn in Kentucky, 24-store liquor chain, and then we own another 30 or so mom and pop liquor stores. We've done that for strategic reasons through alcohol license acquisitions, but also to show that what we've gotten really good at is taking physical infrastructure, integrating our technology and our delivery abilities, and putting product in people's hands in a way that no one else can. When we look to the future, and when we started working with Publicis, it was kind of a really good time because we had this thesis that there was a lot of value to externalizing the technologies that we've built, and long term, not just being the face, but the fabric of instant commerce. And so the Folgers campaign that we did at Publicis was like one of the first test cases for us to say, could we effectively democratize demand for access to the goods that we have and enable people to have this 20-minute magical delivery experience on other digital storefronts or other places that they're spending their time? And are we comfortable just being the back-end layer of all of that? And through the relationship with Publicis, we've really evolved what we did with the Folgers campaign, all the way fast forward to this last Super Bowl, where we launched a direct-to-consumer website for Jif, powered by Gopuff, where during the Super Bowl, there was a limited number of items that were given away, and Jif put a lot of their media behind driving traffic to the D2C site, and within 60 minutes, we were sold out of the goods. So further proving that this idea that customers are spending their time in all different places, wherever you tell them to go, that's where they're going to buy. There may be more value long-term to a logistics network like ours for powering that for brands that may have bigger awareness than we do, right? So we talked about challenger brands before we got up here. We take pride in the fact that we're a challenger brand, but there is real power behind the Smucker's portfolio of brands and the Coca-Colas and Pepsis of the world, the TikToks of the world, et cetera. And we kind of see it as our birthright to power instant commerce for all of these other consumer brands, not just our own. So it's not that there's any we're pulling back from our consumer app and that platform, but we look at Bevmo. I brought that up for a reason. Bevmo is now Bevmo.com is now powered by Gopuff. So the website for Bevmo now operates on all of the rails that we built for instant commerce. And so we're doing a lot of that. We did that with Jif. We're doing this with a number of brands right now, and we think that there is a lot of power to enable consumers to get the goods wherever they are, wherever they're spending their time.
Yeah, there's such a growing need for fulfilling instant gratification that's become expected now. And it's not easy to make the purchase at that immediate moment. They're abandoning the process altogether, so I think that's so important.
Well, and I think you asked about convenience, so I remember the second question. I think that the term convenience has evolved over the last 10 years, right? So when we started, we were basically going after the convenience store industry. It's a $250 billion industry in the US. Made a lot of sense, big business we built. Today, convenience isn't about assortment, right? It's about experience. And so I think these examples are other examples of how can you make shopping more convenient for today's and tomorrow's shopper. Our team likes to say the shoppers that we have today are the shoppers of Walmart and these other retailers tomorrow. They're shopping and behaving very differently than the consumers that retailers are used to. So convenience, we think, plays a huge factor in enabling people to get these goods wherever they're spending their time.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And then, so John, how should brands be thinking about elevating their social and creator commerce strategies, knowing what we,
I think to half answer that, but also build on something he was saying too, I think was an eye-opening thing for us is that when you talk about reaching, Gen Z audiences, the younger millennial shopper, it was very logical, like, okay, go to the platforms where they are, social commerce, social integrations, creator-led content. It doesn't work then if you don't connect that back to the channel and the retail experience that they want to. And so when we talk about reaching growth audiences, I think it both requires, the right content approaches, using partners to help you find the right authentic voices for your consumer, but it may also require you to think through the retail and path to purchase differently too, and that this probably would not have, this would not have worked if we drove to even, an Instacart where you don't have that instant fulfillment and instant gratification. Like that was such a linchpin of, when you want to use these commerce solutions to tell someone to buy now, you gotta wait 2 days or a day for that product to come. Like you don't fulfill that gratification, element to it. So, I think it kind of requires you to think about growth audiences and, all the way through to the retail and shopping experience differently. And then, if you don't do that in a way that you are thinking through the right content approach, it's not going to work either. But you need both of those parts.
Yeah, I agree. It's not crazy. 2 days might be too long.
2 hours is too long.
I know, oh my gosh, it's wild times we live in. John, are you seeing more clients lean into creator commerce as a customer opportunity, or has it reached more of that always-on, like table stakes status?
I think it varies very much by the type of brand or the CPG company that you are. I think for a lot of the brands that probably operate in more traditional retail channels, so this is the fast-moving consumer goods space, I think they are very much still in kind of the test and learn phase. But for some brands, like I think beauty brands, fashion brands, like they were the early adopters of social commerce, and I think they are far more into the always on. And so, what we try to consult our clients like James Bunker on is, what is the right role and how do you kind of continue? So we put out for them like what we call a shoppable mandate, where it's like, how do you need to think about the right layers from a shoppable standpoint on like all of the media that you're doing, and like what are the right criteria for when you should. So we're trying to help push them into that direction to get more comfortable with it.
Yeah, thanks. And then, so Dan, what does the future of commerce look like for Gopuff?
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on it a little bit. We see long-term the potential that we could be doing, the big statement, the big vision is we could be processing more volume through our network from non-Gopuff owned and operated sites than Gopuff first-party sites long-term. And that's not to say we're pulling back on the investment in the core business. We just think that there's that big of an opportunity right now. We also see one of the trends that we're not betting on, but we're really looking at is I think there's some real headwinds in CPG and retail right now that not enough people are talking about. And this is coming from someone who is a retailer and we have an ads business. So I'm going to say a lot of things that are kind of contrary to what you would think I would say. You have this world where we now have 200 retail media networks. Like every week, someone on Google just launched a retail
Wawa
media.
just
Philly.
Yeah.
Wawa just launched a retail media network. It's not sustainable. And from a media buyer's perspective, we're going to get to a point where you've got a list of 200, and the bottom 180 are just going to start to get cut, and then it's going to be 185, and then 190. It's not sustainable for a few reasons. One, retailers are further disintermediating CPGs from their customers. There's no access to real first-party data. There's no direct relationship with consumers. You look at brands like Prime and Feastables, back to the creator thing, the reason they're succeeding. What Prime has been able to build in such a short period of time is nothing short of incredible. And they've been able to do that because of the direct relationship they have with their consumers and the creator aspect that they bring to the table. And then third, CPGs are being taxed to participate in retail media networks. And yeah, the ads are beneficial for CPGs. We have an ads business, but it's it's this expectation that you're paying X% to be part of this. And at some point, this is going to break. We think we can break it. And so that's kind of where we're investing in enabling a lot of these instant commerce tools. And you'll see a lot coming from us in the next few months on how we think we can do that and how do we effectively democratize access to this ability to deliver goods so quickly for all of these brands. So that's our big bet long term. It's not that we're pulling away from the 1P business, but that we're tripling down on the B2B side of the house because we see a really unique opportunity in the market.
Well, and it allows brands to do what they do best, which is create brands. And, I think a lot of big CPGs have struggled with what is my role with DTC, and do I want to invest deeply behind that? And if we can give them the option to not have to and have a out-of-the-box solution that gives them all the benefits, it's just so much easier.
Well, and the way we think about it, and I overheard you talking when I came in, and you were talking about how retailers or brands are allocating their budgets to different retailers, and you're constantly looking for innovative ways to reuse those budgets. The way that we look at a lot of our enablement tools is like, for the cost of an FTE, can we enable all of this stuff for these brands, and then just let them make their media more effective and more efficient, versus asking them to increase their budgets or move their budgets from one retailer to the next. Like, our goal would be, it's less retail dependent, it's consumer audience dependent, and how do we enable that on the front and the back end with our data and with our solutions. And that's where we think the future's going.
Because the consumer doesn't care that the budget came from this line item or this line item.
They also don't really care whether they, unpopular opinion, they don't actually care if they're buying it from Gopuff or Walmart. They just want to be able to get the good when they need it, wherever they are. That's how, the retail need.
I'm personally a deal seeker, so I'm going where
Exactly.
Yeah, not with this blazer though. So, okay, last question before we wrap it up. So, John, given the dynamic nature of digital platforms and consumer preferences, which we were just talking about, how do you envision the future of converging? Sorry, I had to do the alliteration, so just don't judge me. Converging creators, commerce, and convenience.
That's a lot of alliteration. I mean, it's honestly, it's the point that was just made. I think, it is. Our media dollars, our media pool is not growing. And how do we find more effective ways to collapse the funnel, get products into consumers' hands that want it? And I think, the solutions that Gopuff are doing, I've been so bullish on from the beginning, because it just makes so much sense to democratize the access to their fulfillment networks. And so, I think it's about taking the success that we had with our Jif Safe Accelerated Super Bowl campaign and what's the next one? And how do you now begin to turn those into, some of the work that you guys have done with Ben and Jerry's, where, you have powered their entire DTC component of that. How do we start bringing that into it so that we can use our creators, we can use our, OLV and CTV dollars, but we can do so in a way that starts to have a more impactful, shoppable component that consumers actually want to be able to engage with.
Awesome. That's all we had, you guys. Thank you so much for coming and joining to us today. I appreciate it.
Any questions?
We do have time for questions if anyone has anything.
What scared Folgers client the most about working with creators? What were the things in the room that had them freaking out?
I don't think that they were freaked out by it. I mean, creators are wasn't a new idea to it. I think it was putting all of these pieces together within. So we've done shoppable campaigns, we've done creator campaigns. We hadn't really worked with GoPuff in a meaningful way yet. So I think it was the newness of putting all of these things together. But our benefit to them was, as a Publicis power of one team for Smuckers, we had every single part of our organization, from creative strategy to media strategy to commerce to, data and analytics, rallying behind it. So I think it took, they had to connect parts of their own organization that they hadn't really connected before. And so it took a power of one mindset to be able to pull this off. And I think that was just newness. So I don't think nothing freaked them out. I think it was a big campaign that required a lot of different parts of both our Publicis organization and the client organization to fire on all cylinders and work together. And I think that was a big learning for everybody, was that some of these things, integrated work is better, it's not faster. But when you have all the people coming together around a campaign like this, it can be successful.
Yeah, Dan, you mentioned the amount of growth that you're looking at outside, driving outside of the places that you own. Are you looking at that kind of opportunity as just fast-moving goods in that channel, or are there other channels?
So the initial idea we came up with, it was like 5 years ago. I don't know if you guys remember this, but PepsiCo ran this really good Super Bowl campaign. It was called Fire and Ice. It was like Peter Dinklage and Morgan Freeman. And it was like the Mountain Dew and the Doritos product or whatever. It was cool. I tell you that because I remember sitting there watching the Super Bowl ad, and a couple of us were talking, and we're like, these guys are spending, all in production, talent, creative, the media buy, the commitments to the state, the networks, all that stuff. They're spending like $30 million right this year on this campaign, and no one's going to get off their couch in the middle of Super Bowl and go buy these products, right? So it's all ad recall and whatnot. And so we immediately were like, this is going to become an irresponsible act of the CMO in 10 years. Like we think that's going to be, that's our big thesis, right? How do we solve that problem? And so of course we went CPG initially. So we've been really focused, our first product in this like B2B umbrella is focused on CPG. But when we started doing that, I guess like the word got out from CPG to others, and we started getting inbound from streaming services and entertainment platforms and sports teams and you name it, all of these different organizations. So now we're in a lot of active conversations on how do we leverage this technology that we built to enable this capability in a lot of like places that when you hear maybe are obvious but you wouldn't first think of, but where you have tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people spending their time wanting to transact and where there's a ton of media dollars being spent that's not transactable or measurable or anything like that. So over the next, this year you'll start to see a lot of that come to market. And that probably gets, I think CPG is massive, but I think that side could be really interesting too.
Well, okay, sorry, Tim.
Okay, so
Yeah, thanks. So, program running. Thank you, Kristen, Dan, and John. That was
Thanks, guys.
fantastic.